Welcome back to the Tennis Doctors, where physicians discuss the world of men's professional tennis. I'm Dr. Jay Sridhar, and joining me for this episode, Dr. Bilal Ahmed
Hey, good to be here. I'm excited to talk some tennis.
and Dr. Arjun Watani.
Hey there, what a US Open. Let's talk.
Bilal was actually doing work, so Bilal missed the last couple episodes when we were talking, but I think he saw some tennis in between. So Carlos Alcaraz, new US Open champion, new world number one. Not the first player to win a Grand Slam since the big three sort of took over, circa Federer winning Wimbledon 2003, but maybe the one, even more than Andy Murray, even more than Stan Wawrinka, with the chance to win more than just a couple of slams. Probably the most hyped young player who has panned out since Djokovic and Murray. Bilal, take it away. Impressions of Carlos Alcaraz. Were you surprised that it's happened so fast, or was it kind of expected? I mean, what did you think about what happened?
I'm still surprised. I haven't really processed that he's now not only the youngest men's champion in quite some time now, but also just that he's number one. It's so surreal. We're so used to this dominance from a core group of guys. We keep saying Federer, Djokovic, Nadal, Murray in the mix too, but just to see this new name and new dominant force at a young age it's exciting, and it's going to take me a bit to process. But I didn't expect it, to be honest with you. I didn't think this year it would happen. So, I'm rightfully I'm wrong on this, but I'm excited for him. It's exciting for tennis too.
Arjun, when we did the Federer Djokovic match in the lead up for this US Open, we talked about Alcaraz a lot because we said, this is a young Djokovic who ends up losing the final to Federer. And we said, what does this remind you of? And he said, the one person it reminds you of is Carlos Alcaraz because of his ability to take the ball early and attack the backhand, the form on the backhand, and just the mental part of it, the ability to sort of hang in the important points in the rallies. He now is the US Open champion. What are your thoughts after seeing what happened on Sunday in this whole 2 weeks?
Yeah, I thought it was very Roger Federer, Nadal-esque back in the mid 2000s when they just kind of burst onto the scene, both of them, without much pushback from any players. Djokovic, when he came back, he was kind of under the roof of Federer and Nadal's house for a little while, but then rose to dominance in the mid 2010s. But this just gives that feeling of Federer, Nadal, the legends, starting their career early and bursting on the scene. A year ago he was, I think, in the hundreds, and now he's number one. His rise to dominance and just cruising through not cruising through the tournament, but on a roller coaster of a tournament and surviving these long 5-set matches, just showing his will to win that we don't see in many other players. It's just surreal to watch, like Bilal said, exciting to see, and I think it's great for the game of tennis, and he deserves number one with his performance this year. And I'm excited to see where he takes this in the future.
Yeah, I think it's we've been talking about him a lot. He just has something special when you watch him, and it's not just the technique. His technique is picture perfect on the backhand and a unique forehand, but a very, very exquisite and exclusive type of forehand. It's not just the speed around the court, although he is that top 1% in terms of his speed, both offensively and defensively, which is rare. I think Nadal and Djokovic have that lateral foot speed in front and back foot speed defensively. Federer did too, but Federer was really known for that offensive foot speed moving forward, cutting balls off early better than anyone. And I think he's the best combo of the two of those that we've seen in years. And look, you can talk about all the prospects who have come since then. You can talk about a guy like Dimitrov and Nishikori and Raonic. I mean, they have bigger holes in their game than Carlos Alcaraz does. You talk about a guy like Zverev. We've talked about the mentality and the second serve. And I think he has a lot of the tools, but he doesn't have that offensive, he can dominate one offense for long stretches, but it's not the same. It doesn't have the same burst that this guy has. And maybe it doesn't have to because he's 6'6" and he's got a monster serve when he's on. Medvedev doesn't have that burst, and Tsitsipas has some things, but he doesn't have that extra gear. But all of those things aside, I think the thing that impressed me the most about him, and I think the term clutch is overrated in sports. I think that a lot of times clutch is simply performing at your top level despite the circumstances. It's not being better than you are normally. It's being who you are. Mm-hmm. Think Michael Jordan, think LeBron James. They're not better in great moments, but they just maintain their level, which is impressive to do that in tight moments. And he is the rare player. And I think Federer in a lot of ways was like this. I think Nadal and Djokovic were certainly like this. He lifted the parts of his game, Bilal, that were weak when he needed to. And look, in that Sinner Alcaraz match, when he needed to get a return in play, we always, you're barking at the TV. You're like, dude, you don't have to hit a winner on every return. He made sure to hit a solid, deep topspin return. And Sinner missed the backhand. You can say it was an unforced error, but it was a tough shot. Like he took time away from Sinner. When he needed to serve the match out, he doesn't hit that many aces. He hit an ace.
Yeah.
And when it came to the semis, when he needed to press the issue on TFO in the final set, he was getting a lot of deep returns and just taking TFO's time away when he needed to. And in the final, Ruud goes up a set point in that third set. There's a danger moment where we're texting each other saying the gas tank may be empty. He may not have this. And he just found a way. He came with big shot after big shot, saved that, broke Ruud a little bit mentally, I think, going to that tiebreak, and then he just rode the wave. And even in those last couple games, maybe he was on fumes a little bit, and Ruud thinking, okay, I'm going to draw these points out. I'm going to make him work. Big serve, ace, big serve, ace. Every time he needed a big serve, he got it. And that is the weak part of his game that stepped up when he needed it. I think that just is emblematic of who this guy is and why everyone says that's the guy, because there are not many people who can step up and elevate their game, not only at any age, but at age 19.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we talked about this before too. Is there's very few players who can go into that fifth, sixth gear, especially in a fifth set. And a lot of players, I forgot what matches, but they've been losing easy in the fifth set. But even Sinner and Alcaraz, both of them, they really stepped up, and this was just surreal to watch. They're making big shot after big shot. His IQ he's getting better as every match goes on. One thing we talked about was that, we didn't think this year would be his year to win the US Open or a slam. It might be next year or the year after, but he would be a number one player at some point and a slam winner. But he proved us all wrong and is, in the mix of, in a way, in the mix of like those early legendary statuses right now as the youngest number one player. And he's just incredible to watch. He has that energy, that tenacity, and IQ to, imagine he continues winning one or two slams for the next 20 years. He's only 19. He could easily get into the 20s.
Yeah.
At this level, I think he can. So
well, I think he's going to have to make adjustments to have longevity that some of the big guys, the big three, have had.
Yeah.
Bilal, last final thoughts on. We're going to come back to Alcaraz at the end. We talk about the Australian Open, but just final thoughts on what you saw and what you think it implies in terms of where he is. Like he, to me, I think the scariest thing is I think he could be better if he just took his foot off the gas pedal, maybe 10%.
Yeah, I agree. I think he doesn't even know, unfortunately, which like you're alluding to. I think the scary thing for him is that he may run out of gas in terms of his endurance physically, just from the amount of wear and tear he puts on his body to go for these points. And so I think he kind of has a similar sort of nuance to him that Nadal does in terms of his effort level, and I think that can hurt him ultimately if he doesn't space things out properly. But he seems to be getting good guidance from his team, and obviously for him to survive this long of a tournament and the conditions he did in, I think it shows that he's getting good counsel on how to rest and recharge. So I think for him it's a matter of, like you said, knowing when to relax and take your foot off the gas a little bit. You don't need to put 110% effort, which sounds weird. But I think that's the exciting thing for him to see where he's going to go, because the sky's the limit for this kid. And unless there's a surge by Alcaraz, I don't really see anyone else really challenging him at this level, at this age.
Yeah, the last thing I was to say, I love Nadal, is my favorite player ever, and I have mixed feelings about Djokovic, but I appreciate how good he is. I think he's a one of one. I don't want to hear the comparisons, because I can't remember a guy who made me laugh or jump out of my seat or be like, I need to watch that again so many times consistently in a match as this guy. He is a shot maker without being a showboat. Like, he's not Nick Kyrgios pulling up tweeners that are meaningless. Like, US Open, if you haven't seen it, you got to go watch this video. They released the top 10 Alcaraz points, and it doesn't even show 40 other points that could have been shown. Yeah. And one of the first points in the rankings they showed was this tweener winner he hit against Baez in the first round. I completely forgot about, because it was 2 weeks ago. It was a ridiculous shot, and the only shot he could hit in that moment. And that's the thing. Like he has that extra thing that's special that I don't even know if Federer and Nadal and Djokovic could do that or did that as consistently. Like they obviously did incredible things in their own way, but there is a unique quality to the way he hits some of these shots and creativity that's different, and that's the way it should be. You know, in basketball, Michael Jordan dunked a certain way. Vince Carter took it another level, right?
Yeah.
LeBron James, all the comparisons to Jordan, he's his own player. Giannis is his own player. And the same thing comes to tennis. Like this guy is his own guy. He's a one-of-one. I don't know if we're going to see another Carlos Alcaraz again. So I asked you guys to bring 3 winners and 3 losers from the Open, and that will lead into our final discussion, which is look forward. So Bilal, I'll let you start. And that Alcaraz can't be a winner. We know he's a winner.
Yeah.
I'll even say, you know, unless you haven't noticed, I would say Casper Ruud was a finalist. It's an obvious sort of winner/loser for him. But who are your 3 winners, first of all? Let's talk about people you felt like will take a lot from this US Open.
Yeah, honestly, this may not be a conventional #1 winner, but I think Juan Carlos Ferrero deserves a lot of praise for picking up a 15-year-old and just saying, I just see something in this kid, and really investing the time and, you know, the knowledge and effort to coach him to become who he is. I mean, that's just
and let's say he walked away from coaching Alexander Zverev to coach Carlos Alcaraz after coaching him for a couple months at age 18, 19. And I don't know how much of that was Zverev, how much of that was Alcaraz, but he walked away from a guy who was destined to be the next guy and chose Alcaraz.
Yeah. I mean, I actually did not even remember that. So that's actually even more, adds more context to it. So I think he deserves a lot of praise. I thought his comments in the post-match or post-final comments were interesting, just about how he wasn't surprised. I mean, he knew this was going to happen. And so I think with his mentorship, it's going to be exciting to see where he goes from here. I think Francis Tiafoe surpassed anyone's expectations. You know, he's been kind of lauded as a showman to an extent, just loves the crowd, but he really showed a lot of heart. And I think he surpassed his expectations of himself and for a lot of people to make it to the stage he did in the tournament. And I thought he gave a good fight. I mean, I really felt like in the semis he had chances to win it. Alcaraz just went to a different level that you need to have to be legend of that status. But I really was excited to see where he's going to take his game going from here. Hopefully it motivates him. And then third, I know we don't give a lot of credit to oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on the name right now.
Well, while you're doing that, I don't want to dump on Alexander Zverev, but here's that Juan Carlos Ferrero quote about Alexander Zverev, about his time working with him. They have too many distractions off the court: phone calls, social networks, friends who suddenly appear. I watch them fooling around Instagram and not thinking about tennis as it was in our time. Zverev, for example, was 3 hours on the court, but he could not perform quality tearing for an hour and a half. There were protests, stops, angers, distractions. At the time, we collided due to his lack of punctuality and lack of respect for the team members, even though his father tried to help me.
Oh, wow. That's brutal.
That's fighting words.
My third person was actually Kakanov, because I felt like even though he's not necessarily somebody who is a fan favorite or a projected top pick to make the list later stages of a tournament. I mean, he beat Nick Kyrgios in a very pro Nick Kyrgios crowd at a time where Nick Kyrgios is playing well, and he beat who he's supposed to beat to make the semis. Now, granted, Ruud is the kind of guy who was going to take him out just by nature of their game and the way they play each other. But I feel like he deserves credit for making it to a semifinal, and I was impressed that he was able to hold his way through. So I've always liked his game. I thought his forehand is probably one of the top 5 right now on tour. So hopefully he gets more chances like this and see what he does.
Love the comment on Ferrero. I love the Ferrero facial expressions were great because he never really said anything. But you know, there was one point where Alcaraz missed that ball on set point against Sinner, where he did the full meme face palm, where he literally just like went fully into the like, I just can't deal with this. And then when Alcaraz, you know, Arjun, I talked about when Alcaraz was screaming at him during the Sinner match, and he's so frustrated, like, tell me what to do, tell me what to do. Ferrero was just covering his mouth, not saying anything, just staying out of it, very calm. We'll talk about TF catching up a little bit later. Arjun, do you have the same 3 winners? Any overlap or any different ones?
Yeah, I have a similar in Tiafoe. I thought Ruud was a winner, and I thought Sinner was a winner. You know, I think out of after Alcaraz, I think he showed that he has a 5th gear in him and some flashes of brilliance. That match could have gone either way. They were that was a shot making match, and it sucks that like one of them had to lose. It could have been Alcaraz who lost that match. He's like it could just a flip of right there, honestly. Like, and Sinner could have been the winner of the tournament. And so that one I'm sure hurt him a lot. But you know, if I were him, I'm taking the performance of the match. Like that match, one of the latest ever finishes, one of the longest matches, one of the is compared to one of the greatest matches in tennis history.
Yeah.
It being a semifinals, yeah, it's not as momentous as some other matches, but the quality was up there in like a top 10, top 5 match historically. Yeah, so I hope he really works this off season and capitalizes on what he learned this tournament and experienced. TFO, same comments. I think he'll continue to improve. I hope I hope it's not just a Cinderella run and he was just like pushed forward with the crowd. I hope he actually improves and he was pushed into a 5th gear this tournament in a different at a different level. And he probably played some level of tennis that he's never played before. And if he can get to that level and sustain it, then that would be very awesome to watch. I think he showed flashes of it against Alcaraz, but just couldn't sustain it.
Yeah.
Kind of like a Cam Norrie playing Djokovic, taking a set off but couldn't sustain it.
Yeah.
And then Ruud, yeah, I think he's a big time winner here. He's gonna come back, and I think he's gonna win a slam in the future. Maybe like more on the Murray level, winning a couple here and there. I don't see him asserting dominance over anyone, but I think he has incredible IQ, and he's gonna be a brilliant player for years to come.
Yeah, it's funny. This is what makes people so excited about Alcaraz, right? Is not just Alcaraz, it's what he makes other players do. And I don't think Sinner or TFO have ever played better in the moments where they got hot. The level was being pushed up because he's so good. You either fall off or you keep up, and neither of them could win those matches. But I'll tell you this: I have Jannik Sinner too as a winner, and we talked about this already. But it'll be very fascinating to see where his ranking ends up heading to the Australian Open, because he's 14. He's only 14th in the race. He missed a lot of time this year. He missed a lot of ground, and he only made the quarters here. He didn't get a ton of points like a semi or final, even though the match was really hyped. So he may not be in the year-end championships, but to me, he's a guy who seems super hungry. And that match taught me, he's in way better shape than any of us thought. And maybe he thought, because there were times in that match, it looked like he wanted to tap out, and his team was like, no, you got this. I think that he proved a lot by winning a couple of 5-setters in this tournament, when that's not necessarily been a forte for him in the past. I think his serve was monstrous at times against Sinner in terms of against Alcaraz, in terms of getting him out of trouble, when that hasn't been a forte. And I love the fact that they went to him for a post-match interview at whatever 2:30 or 2:40 a.m. because it was such a momentous occasion. And the facial expression on his face when the lady was like, "Oh, do you want to do an interview?" And he was like, "No." He's like, "I'm not doing that." And I don't think it's because he was upset. Obviously, he was upset about losing, but I don't think he was angry. I don't think it was because he was jealous. I think it was honestly just like he was like, "I didn't win, and I want to win." And I think he really wants that. My question, Bilal, you guys both said TFO. Arjun and I talked about this before the semis. Then we saw the semi. I think TFO, his level in the 4th set was the best I ever played. To break back twice and to hang in that set. What do you predict for him? Do you think that this is his last slam semi? Do you think this is a one-off? Do you think he builds off this? Like, what do you see in the future for Frances TFO?
I thought his response was pretty much telling of where his head is at. I mean, he's saying that I'm going to win this thing, and I'm not sure if he ever will. But I think that attitude after a tough loss at home with the crowd for you says a lot about his ability to at least take this and be like, all right, I want more than this next time. And this guy's good, but I had my chances to beat him tonight. So I don't think Tiafoe obviously has the skill level of an Alcaraz, of a Sinner. He's not the same level of talent, but I like his mentality. And honestly, on a given day, you never know who's gonna have their chance. And if he finds the right timing and he finds the balls feeling the right way, I mean, I don't look past this guy making a final. I just don't know if he can win it.
Casper Ruud, you guys both referenced Casper Ruud, obviously the finalist here. Bittersweet for him. I think if you had told him at the start of the year, hey, you're going to have one match to play for the #1 ranking in a slam, and you're going to be a set all, and you're going to have set points, I think he would have taken it. Obviously, it's bittersweet that he couldn't pull it out. I agree, though, with Arjun Bilal. I thought Ruud impressed me. He just keeps getting better. He keeps shoring up his weaknesses. He gets a lot of flack for not being flashy or exciting, but he's very smart. He knows his game plan. I thought he played a good final. I think I don't think he could have played that final any better than he did. He didn't waste those set points. Alcaraz was just better than him. He could have been a little cleaner in the tiebreak, but I think he was pressing because Alcaraz was being the attacker and he felt like he needed to attack to take initiative. I think it was an impressive year. I just am not as positive as Arjun is that he's going to win a slam. I love it for him because I think he's a great guy. I just, and we're going to talk about the future after we talk about the losers. I'm just a little concerned about the ceiling for him. And this match reminded me a lot. The last time there was a match where the winner could have become number one in the US Open final that I can remember where they lost was, and this is way before your guys' time, was the very first US Open final I watched. It's the 96 Sampras Chang final, where the whole thing about Chang before is if he wins this final, he's going to be number one in the world for the first time ever.
Oh.
And he got destroyed. He got absolutely flattened. And the image I remember as a little boy watching this TV set, watching a US Open final, was after the match, his brother, who was his coach, literally just sitting in the stands for 2 hours after just sitting there by himself, like just thinking, because, and he never got close again. And that was it. Like I felt, they talked about this in the broadcast, Bilal, but he may never have a chance to be number one again. Things kind of aligned for him. Djokovic didn't play. Nadal got hurt. He racked up a lot of points. Zverev was out. Tsitsipas was struggling. Alcaraz wasn't quite there yet. Sinner's not quite there. It was kind of like the perfect window for him to take the number one ranking. I'd love to say he gets there. I'd be shocked if he's the number one ranked player in the world in the future or wins a slam. But I don't know how you feel about those things.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for him, I like that he adjusted his strategy based off of his loss to Alcaraz in Miami. I mean, he was doing the right things on return. He was being more aggressive. He was trying to finish points, but he knew he couldn't hang from the back. And I feel like, I mean, he was still, obviously he's a baseliner and he still was at the baseline quite a lot, but I feel like he at least tactically was playing the right way. And I mean, for him to just not close that third was just unfortunate for him, but Alcaraz stepped it up again. But that being said, all those things aside, the future, I don't think it's necessarily, I wouldn't write him off for getting a slam. I think as Alcaraz gains more momentum, holding on to number one is going to be more of we're going to see that more becoming more of his sort of story. But I think Ruud does have a chance to at least grab a slam. Obviously, he's a clay courter, so I don't think that he can completely be written off for one slam here or there. But he's 23, so he's got the time on his hand, and we'll see. I mean, he's also proven that he's a hard court player, so maybe Australia with their slower surface can also do him well. So I don't write him off for not winning one. I think he has the potential to do it, and I think it's actually pretty reasonable.
I'm more optimistic on Ruud than I am on Tiafoe. I'm worried about Tiafoe. That is he going to be another Fernando Verdasco or a Tsonga, and they have these flashes of brilliance in a couple slams early in their career, and then kind of just their journeyman for the in the like 30s and 40s for much of their career after that.
I mean, I would say Tsonga, you can't see my hands, but Tsonga's a notch above of Verdasco in that aspect. He had a better career.
Probably, yeah. Neither of them won slams, I believe. So yeah, they I in terms of like elite level, I don't see Tiafoe getting to that elite level, but I think he's going to be a very, very good player for a long time and will knock out a top 10 opponent every few tournaments and make a good win, an exciting match. But I don't see him as like a big slam contender back to back consistently.
I don't have any winners to add because my winners overlap with yours. So let's talk about losers, and I'll go first. And I know this is going to sound a little bit harsh, but my three losers, we already talked about Taylor Fritz and Stefano Tsitsipas, so I'm not going to go there, but I think they are on that list, and we can't forget what happened the first week. But I think the other one's got to be Nick Kyrgios to me, because we just talked about Ruud having an opportunity to win a slam. I think for Kyrgios, this is a big wake-up call, Bilal, that, it's not just about putting in the training and the work and getting lucky with the draw. Everyone's really good, and it doesn't matter. He's not, Arjun and I talked about this, he's not, and very few people in history are at the same level of a big three, where if he's just dialed in, he's going to win the slam easily. He just doesn't, I don't think he has enough deficiencies in his game that exists, that's just not the way it is. And he ran into a guy who matches up well against him, and Kachanov, who is comfortable playing him. And honestly, I don't think he would have beaten Alcaraz if he had gotten there. We never know what would have happened with that match, but just the level that was, the intensity point to point is what Kyrgios struggles with. I don't think he would have hung with Kyrgios. I don't even know if he beats Casper Ruud, honestly. If Casper Ruud playing that way, it would have been interesting to see. I think him and Berrettini are kind of my two half losers. They get into a quarterfinal slam, it's not a loss. I'm curious. Arjun and I talked for a while about Kyrgios and Berrettini and our thoughts taking those two away. I think we all expected a lot from those two guys. Who do you think is more hurt by this loss between the two of them?
I think Kyrgios was actually probably more hurt because I feel like this was the peak of his game the last few years, and he has been putting in the effort. And I think he really saw this as an opportunity for himself. He came up against a guy who's steadier. I mentioned Kaknov as being kind of guy who knew how to dial in on the opportunity and just put the noise to the side. And I don't know if Kyrgios can do that sometimes. I feel like that's what kind of holds him back. He buys into the noise quite a lot, and it obviously helps propels him. But to a certain extent, I think it actually also holds him back too. So I was disappointed because I actually had him going pretty far, and I really would have liked to see him kind of be in the mix with these younger guys to see what he can do to spoil their party. But other than that, I don't think Berrettini was as much of a loser for me, just given that he's also not played a whole lot. I don't think he was coming off of like a rhythm that he felt like he was a favorite here. I think he was still kind of relying on where his game was at when he got to New York and also his previous experiences. But I find Kyrgios to be more of a loser out of those two.
Yeah, it's a little interesting. Berrettini maybe we're in that Nadal camp where it's like I showed up, I wasn't 100%. I'm annoyed and pissed because it didn't really pan out. But is it worse to come in and be like, I'm healthy and I'm in shape and this is my time and not have it pan out? Maybe it's more frustrating that way. Arjun, losers for you? Anyone else?
Yeah, we always talk about FAA and how he's, his career is just not panning out.
Yeah, not my greatest take.
Yeah, it's like you chose Alcaraz, but you also chose FAA, so you're 1-1 right now.
1-1, yeah.
So
yeah, it's tough. It's a tough balance. I don't know.
Yeah, every tournament you kind of expect him, like, even if you know how he's doing, he's a good player, but you kind of expect him, okay, maybe he'll make a fourth round this tournament, maybe he'll make a quarterfinals. He had a couple bad tournaments, maybe he'll have a good one, or finally get a few wins in a row and go maybe deep in the tournament.
He doesn't have it
back. Yeah, he lost to a
I've watched him a lot. He's one of those guys, paper, he has every tool. He has the big serve, he has the big forehand, but he's missing two things. He's missing sort of that wow factor. I've never watched FAA and been like, oh wow. And I felt a little bit of oh wow when I watched Alcaraz. Well, a lot of oh wow when I watched Alcaraz. I felt it when I watched Sinner. With now his running forehand is ridiculous. He's got one of the best running forehands in the game. Yeah, he's a great returner. I don't get that oh wow when I watch FAA play, and I think that's honestly tied into his ceiling. The other thing is Carlos Alcaraz now some ridiculous like 8-1 or 7-1 in 5-set matches. Yeah. FAA's title final record, which we've covered here, is brutal, and I think a little bit indicative of where he's at mentally in tight matches.
Yeah. Other than him, I have Fritz, Tsitsipas on my list. Those two players, even FAA, they're like kind of they just don't finish the job. They were big letdowns. I think they were coming into this tournament as contenders. To go deep. For me, Fritz was a quarterfinalist, semifinalist this tournament, and just let me down and let himself down.
Well, look, he was in that. I believe he was in that Casper Ruud section, right? And maybe Ruud beats him, but we said that was the section of opportunity, and Ruud took that all the way to the final.
Yeah.
So Fritz could have been a finalist. FAA would have been playing Kyrgios in the quarters. There was opportunity there, and throwing out for poor Andre Rublev, who still can't get past the quarters of a slam.
Yeah. No, there's other losers in there too. Tommy Paul losing 6-0 in the fifth. He had a long match, a bunch of tiebreakers in that match, but 6-0 in the fifth set kind of just shows where someone's fitness is relative to the field. Ruud is just on another level. So Tiafoe did great for America, but the other players didn't really step up. Yeah.
Jensen Brooksby got absolutely hosed by Carlos Alcaraz too, and he's a tricky player, but that was not tricky for Alcaraz at all. So let's talk about looking forward. So the end of the season, a lot of people don't follow because there's no slams, and it gets kind of weird because there's a tournament in Nur Sultan in Tokyo. The hours are weird if you're in the US. Like, it's hard to follow what's going on. But a lot of the top players are active. I saw Nadal. We were thinking maybe he shut it down for the season. He's already practicing indoors. I don't know if that's good for his ab or not, but he's doing it. Let's talk about who makes the year-end finals, because I think at this point, once you get past the Open, it's more interesting to follow the live ATP race than the rankings, because the rankings and the race are the same at the end of the year. So this is who's in pole position to be at what ranking. So Alcaraz is pretty comfortably ahead in the race, unless Nadal can catch him. He's probably going to be your year-end number one, the youngest year-end number one ever, unless he gets hurt. Nadal, Ruud, and Tsitsipas. Tsitsipas, amazingly, despite a pretty mediocre year by what we think of him, they're all guaranteed now. Tsitsipas is fourth in the race, and they're all past the cutoff for points to qualify for the ATP finals. That's 4 spots gone. And then Novak Djokovic is going to make it because he's a slam winner, and he's in the top 20 of the rankings, and he's going to be playing. So you have 5 of your positions taken. Bilal, if I ask you the 3 guys who are going to fill it out, I'm going to give you the next guys in order of where they are in the rankings. So this is an order of points probability, but you can tell me which 3 you think you're going to make. Medvedev, Rublev, Felix. I'll skip Zverev because he's not going to play the rest of the season. So Felix, Hercox, Fritz, Nori, PCB, Berrettini, and then you get to Yannick Sinner all the way down at 14. So he's way down there. If you had to pick 3 of these guys to make the year-end championships, I guess Nick Kyrgios isn't there, right? Because no Wimbledon points. Who's going to be playing in the year-end championships with the 5 guys we talked about?
Yeah, I definitely would put Medvedev in there. I don't think that he's the kind of guy who's going to let this, because he was actually, I didn't get to give my losers, but he's definitely a loser for me in this tournament. But I think that being said, he recovers from these things mentally. He is actually pretty, he's a tank mentally, so I don't think it's going to really affect him much. But I do foresee him having a strong indoor season. And I think he'll do well. I think he'll advance. Cam Norrie, again, steady. Probably will have a couple of small tournaments where he can kind of produce some results and hopefully solidify his place. And other than that, I don't know. I don't feel very strong about this, but I feel like maybe Rublev, just because he's close.
Yeah.
Just because he's close.
He's got a, yeah, I mean, the 3 guys who are well ahead of the other contenders are Medvedev, Rublev, and Felix.
Yeah.
So the question is whether Hercox, Fritz, Nori, PCB, Berrettini, or Sinner are going to catch Felix.
I don't think Felix will close. I think if anything, Rublev has maybe more of a shot. I also like his game a little more indoors currently as well. So I don't think Felix will close.
Yeah, in my mind, I feel like the top 6 or 7 are set. Alcaraz and Nadal have like secured it, I believe, and then Ruud, Tsitsipas, Medvedev, Rublev are kind of above the rest of the field.
Djokovic.
Isn't Djokovic a little?
So Djokovic is guaranteed because he won a slam. And even though it's weird because they didn't give points for Wimbledon, but it still counts that he won a slam. And if you win a slam, you're guaranteed as long as you're in the top 20, which you will be.
Okay, perfect then. And so it's really down to that 8th spot. And is it going to be FAA or is it going to be someone else in that field? I think it's whoever wins Paris and whoever wins, some of the 500s that are coming up, Tokyo. And I think there's another one. So I think there's opportunity for someone who's lower in the race from 9 to 15 to make that jump. It could be a Berrettini, it could be a Cilic who gets on fire. It could be I don't see Nori, winning a Masters 1000, but a Busta could certainly, catch on fire. Fritz, at this point, I don't think.
Are you? You're too emotionally close to Taylor Fritz.
I don't think
you can't do it again.
I don't think he's going to do it. Honestly, if I see someone winning a Masters, it's going to be Sinner, Berrettini, Cilic, or maybe even Hercox if they catch on fire.
How about, so also, we didn't talk about Hubie Hercox because no one really knows who he is. He has now become the classic, do not pick this guy to go deep in a major guy because he simply does not have it. I'm sorry. So this reads this an Australian Open, right? And we talked about Yannick Sinner, so we'll come back to Yannick Sinner. This year, Alcaraz made the leap in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And then Djokovic got banned from Australia and all sorts of wackiness ensued. But guys a lot of times come back better in Australia than you think they're going to be. I think the guys who looked better in Australia than we expect them to be, take away Nadal and Medvedev, I think the guys who were really impressive were Sinner to an extent until he got destroyed by Tsitsipas. Alcaraz lost to Berrettini. I thought Berrettini was impressive. And I thought Shapovalov actually came out of the offseason looking really good. And then that match with Nadal just screwed up his whole season mentally. He's just gone.
Mm.
Bilal, two questions. Who do you think is going to be the two guys who you're going to see at the Australian Open? You're like, okay, this guy's ready. He's taking it up another level. Who wins the Australian Open?
Oh, good question. The two guys, I think Yannick Sinner is coming. I think this is
Yeah.
his year. This is his come up year. I think I didn't mention him as a winner, but I do feel like he deserves recognition for what he did, and I think that he's going to use this motivation. I have no doubt actually about that. He just has that mentality. So I foresee him maybe in the offseason he can work on his fitness and just get that mentally a little bit more, get some more confidence from that side of his game physically, and then he could have an awesome season. So I think he's a threat in Australia. I think he'll bring his game up. I think Berrettini as well. I think I'm going all of Italy here, but I think Berrettini is also going to kind of use this time now to really work his way back into the game and assert the same level of dominance that he's had in the past few years, especially during the grass court season. I think he knows that now's the time because these young guys are coming too. So I think he has that same mentality where he'll use the offseason to make the most of it.
Arjun, you didn't pick a winner.
Oh, winner. Good point. I'm still going to Alcaraz, honestly, because I think what we're seeing is a 2003 or a 2003 Federer type moment where obviously Federer didn't win the U.S. Open, but he won Wimbledon that year and then won the Aussie Open in 2004. And I feel like that was kind of his ascent to the top. And I feel like Alcaraz is in that moment right now. I think it's just inevitable that he's going to continue to improve. I'm sure him and Juan Carlos Ferrero are literally talking today about what they're going to be doing next. I don't think this is the kind of guy who rests on his laurels. So, I mean, at this point, I almost feel like you're crazy to not pick Alcaraz. And maybe I'm buying into the hype a little bit, but you know what? It'll be interesting to see. And then if Djokovic is in the mix, we'll see what happens.
Arjun, who are your two guys to take the leap, and who
Yeah.
you picking?
So people who I mean, Alcaraz, of course, is my guy who's going to win the Australian Open. I think it's going to be between him and Djokovic now. It's their guys are ready for most of the slams in the near future. People who are going to make the leap, I'm looking at people. I feel like Ben Shelton, he's interesting. I still think he needs another year to fully mature into his game. He's young. I don't think he'll make a big leap, but I think he's going to rack up some wins next year. I'm looking at what was his name? Cressy. I'm looking at Berrettini, Tommy Paul. I think they're all going to put some crazy good work in this off season. I even think Kyrgios, I think he's still motivated. I think he's going to put in some crazy good work in the off season. And finally, I'm interested to see how Shapovalov uses his off season. I think he may, after seeing his fellow classmates, rise up, I think he may be someone who wants to be in that spotlight, and he's kind of being overshadowed by a Rublev or a Ruud, and he's going to put in some good work. And finally, I want to see Tiafoe, and I know he's going to put in work. Is it going to translate into on-court results? I'm not sure, but I'm curious to find out.
Yeah, I love those picks. I mean, I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I think one of the guys who's gonna make the leap is Alcaraz. Actually, I think, like you said, Bilal, I think he's back to the drawing board with Ferrer after this, and they're not gonna say, "Oh, we won." He's gonna be like, "Well, what can I do better?"
Yeah.
And I think he's gonna come in with a beefed up serve, and if he can win more free points, and
they're gonna be like, you can't be taking 5 sets, 4 matches in a row. Yeah.
I think he's going to come back, I think, at a different level. We saw it this year in Australia. He just looked like a different person physically. And I think he made the physical leap, and I think he's going to make a serve leap next year. I think Yannick Sinner is my other guy. I think it's a little bit obvious, but if I'm thinking of someone who's not obvious, I'm going to say not Shapovalov. I think he's in that Verdasco sort of group where he's got the tools and he looks fun, but he just never really puts together, and it's harsh to say.
Yeah. I don't think he would be a year-round winner, but he's
no. I think Jack Draper, that's a Bilal Ahmed favorite. I think Jack Draper is an interesting guy because Jack Draper beat Felix very comfortably. That we don't remember that match, but that was a professional 3-break straight set win. And then he was up about serving for the third set against Kachanov when he got hurt. I think he's got a lot of game. I love his mentality. I think you can't teach mentality to some of these people, and I think he's got that. I'd be curious if he gets healthy, what he looks like the Aussie Open. And it's Alcaraz's time. What are you going to say? I'm just look. I think the dream is we need to see Alcaraz and Djokovic on a hard court. I'm
Oh, it's
just.
awesome.
I think. I think it just needs to happen, and I hope that Djokovic gets entry in the Aussie Open or gets the vaccine better. If he probably won't, but I think that to me is the most interesting thing to watch is what happens when those two play on a hard court, and what does it mean for Djokovic physically? Like, can Djokovic hang with Alcaraz physically for 4 or 5 hours? That to me is the most interesting question because that's when we find out how great these guys are is when they get pushed. And I just feel Djokovic hasn't really been pushed a lot in the last couple of years by anyone. It'd be interesting to see what happens when he meets some guy who can actually just hang with him from the baseline.
Yep. Yeah, that'd be cool.
All right, guys, a lot to look forward to. Thanks for hanging with us this U.S. Open season, and we'll be back. So maybe some cool match rewatches in the next couple of weeks. So thanks so much.
All right, guys.
Thanks,
See ya.
guys.